It's about getting into schools and talking to young people because, you know, I know that people can change. And it's about talking to people and getting them to understand and perhaps step back from violence and prejudice and whatever. And we just need to work together and keep on the good fight there.
Absolutely. Hey there, guys. We are ecstatically happy to announce that we are associated with the Sophie Lancaster Foundation.
The times are changing, and with the unfortunate death of Sophie, those changes have made a massive impact for the future. If Sophie was with us still today, I can guarantee what you are doing will still be reaching so many lives of young teenagers, young adults, and those who wish to be as different as possible. So thank you very much.
To find out more about this incredible foundation and all the work they do, and more importantly, how you can help, head on over to www.sophielancasterfoundation.com.
Hi everybody, my name is Mark Irwin. I'm a director of photography. Originally from Canada, I live in California now. I'm here with Tom and Jamie, Chronicles of Podcast. I'm going to tell you all the secrets that I know from my life and times in the film business. Enjoy.
Well. Would you believe it? We're back. After a much-needed westward holiday, the Chronicles of Podcast are back. Oh, hang on a second, I'm so sorry. Oh, there we are. Hi, guys. It's the Chronicles of Podcast. We're back. And it's the 43rd edition. And I believe, Jamie, these are the Chronicles of Mark Irwin, am I right?
They are indeed, sir.
Wonderful. Well, I won't keep anybody else waiting. We'll get the show right back on the road, and I'm driving. Hit it! Jamie.
Yes, sir.
Should we get to that piece of resistance?
Oh, we definitely should.
Wonderful. That's what everyone's here for. Welcome to the Chronicles of Mark Irwin. Mark is a Hollywood cinematographer, would you believe? Ooh. Jamie, what a guest to get. He has worked on movies such as Dumb and Dumber, The Fly, RoboCop 2. There's something about Mary. 10 Things I Hate About You. I got them confused. Very sorry about that. And many, many, many more. It's insane. Big Mama's House 2's in there as well. There's so many stories in this interview. It's literally to go, no way. Really? Oh my God. Really? I love this sort of interview. It's great.
Yeah. This is phenomenal.
It is brilliant. What a way to come back after a week off as well. With an absolute bloody doozy, as you said earlier.
Absolutely.
We had a lot of fun. Mark was just so forthcoming. It literally like, ask me whatever you want. Ask me whatever you want.
I love those guests. Like, as soon as I contacted him, he's like, yeah, I'll come do it. Ask me anything you want. I'll answer anything. This is a man that's just like, I'm coming towards the end of my career now. I don't really give a shit if I piss it off. Bring it the fuck on.
What I love as well is that he basically went to our back catalogue and went, oh, you've had some people I know and some friends of mine. Yeah, I'd love to. I love that shit. This is exactly where we wanted to get to in life. So, this is fucking cool. If you're a big fan of Freddy Got Fingered as well, that's also in there as well. So
yes, it is. I love how passionate this man is about what he does as well, and the fact he's now training other people to do what he does. And it's just phenomenal. It's so many amazing stories. Oh, you're gonna love this one, people. You really are.
You really, really are. Yeah, Jamie's not wrong. Jamie is not wrong. So we're not going to sit here and waffle. We're going to get straight down to it.
Yes.
Jamie.
Yes, sir.
Any final words?
Just, Mark, if you are listening, thank you so much, my friend. We would definitely need to have you back on in the future because we barely scratched the surface.
Oh, yes.
People, you're going to love this one.
You really are. This was so much fun to record. Ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, interviewing this week, he's a Hollywood cinematographer, done movies such as Dumb and Dumber, The Fly, RoboCop 2, There's something about Mary, plus many, 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 many more. It's Mark Irwin now.
So wait a minute, you're both in Cardiff?
No.
You're in Cardiff?
Yes.
Tom.
And I'm in Birmingham.
Okay, and my family is from Ebbw Vale, so I'm a Welshman.
No way.
Oh, yes. My father's family is all Welsh. Half my family's still there in Ebbw Vale, and so it's a small world.
That's incredible.
Whereabouts is Ebbw Vale? I'm not familiar.
It's not far. It's about near Mid Wales-ish, isn't it?
Yeah, in Merthyr Tydfil Valley. It's a coal valley, Central Wales.
That's nuts.
Jamie knew that. He's just
I did. I was testing your geography. No, I had no idea. I used to live in Wales, but still, I didn't know.
It's weird living in America when people have a certain family name and you say, where's your family from? And they say, oh, from Cincinnati. Yeah, but your family that came to America, Cincinnati. That's all I know. They don't know. They don't care. That's why they're happy to shoot people left and right, because that's how to solve things.
Oh my! Well, we won't even get into what happened in Texas. That's just, yeah. I just don't understand when's it going to stop?
Never.
I know.
It'll never stop. What I love is the fact that they're calling for gun control, and have to be this old to buy a gun and so on. There are 400 million guns unaccounted for in America. And so to say, well, now we have a solution. We'll make sure they have to be 21 so they can buy a gun. It's a little late. The horse, the barn, they're everywhere, I had a long talk I work with grips, and everyone's got a gun in this country. They don't always carry them. In Texas, it's now, you don't need a permit and you can carry it, open carry, just 6-shooters, Wild West. So I said, imagine that this was not a gun problem. We can't see all the guns. Imagine the entire country was flooded with 30 feet of water. Water everywhere. Everyone's floating, like Waterworld. Like there's no land left. It's all water. And someone says, I know, we'll drain it. There's their solution. Okay, well, drain it where? How can you do that? 400 million guns, and suddenly we'll stop one being bought at a time. And that'll be the solution.
Oh my days!
So
it's
a silly country.
It is, because they, especially when they want to shoot something up, they choose a school every time. It's so weird. Why are you choosing the school to go to? This.
Well, the military calls them soft targets, and that's in the twisted mind of these guys who otherwise would be at home tormented or get a gun and stab their grandmother, and that'd be the end of that. But they can buy these assault weapons and then say, I found a solution to my problem. But the truth is, I grew up in Canada and I moved to America by choice. The truth is, the rest of the world does not live in this desperate mindset. There's no health care. There's no minimum wage. Minimum wage is $7.25. So let's pretend it's $10 an hour. And you work 39 hours. You can't work 40, otherwise they have to pay you as an employee and give you health benefits. So 39 hours a week working at Costco or something. You now have $390. You can't afford rent, food, health insurance for sure. You can't even afford to go on the bus. So this is what's ticking in everyone's mind. And, oh, you Canadians with your free health care. No, Canada is the same as Sweden, the same as, Tom, you want to know the truth? My grandfather worked for Aniron Bevan. He was his campaign manager. Bevan was from Ebbw Vale. Jamie, do you know who Aniron Bevan was?
I haven't got a clue, to be honest with you.
And Tom, you must know as a Welshman.
I'm not Welsh. I'm Scottish.
Okay, well that's your fault. But that's no. Aniron Bevan started the National Health Service. He fought, and that's how it became accepted. And he was fighting Clement Attlee and Macmillan, everybody. They just said, oh, no. The poor people have to stay poor. That's the way the world is. And in America, it's the same way. But everyone that has socialized medicine knows that if they break their thumb or they break their head, they aren't going to go bankrupt. And that's the number one cause of bankruptcy in America.
It's just
having health problems.
Yeah, it's just deluded. It's just delusion. All they care about is money. That's all they want. They don't want anything else. It's just money, 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 money. That's all they care about.
And because they need it. The working man, that's why you see these shows like Undercover Boss and Shark Tank and shows like that.
Yeah.
They're hugely popular because that's how people see this. I mean, the lottery business, lottery ticket thing is so huge. It used to be that was against the law. There was a thing called the numbers racket that you'd see in gangster movies and people running numbers in Harlem. You know, what is that? And the numbers were the 3 digits on a dollar bill, or the 3 digits that were printed in the New York Times, and everyone would bet on that. And now the government said, "Well, we'll take that. We'll take over that." And now you can buy $5 and take a quick pick, and everyone's running around with cash because the thought that they'll win $2 million or maybe $200 million.
Yeah,
that it's the excited states of America on one side, a blaze of glory, and I continually confront Americans. I've kind of given up because it's not worth it. But you and I, we grew up in a parliamentary system, and for right or for wrong, John Major, Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, he's another Scotsman, Margaret Thatcher, there's a method of government that works. And I always ask Americans about the parliamentary system. I don't know. It's crazy. British stuff. We kicked their ass years ago. Okay, great. So what did you do? What did you create that was a better method of government? And this is what they came up with. And I asked them, why does no other country in the world think that America's method of government is the best? Let's do that. Nobody does, because they know it sucks.
It sucks and it's confusing.
Oh, God, yeah. But what's scary is your country and my country of Canada, and I'm trying to think of an older one, perhaps Spain. Everyone else, every other country is one of the newer countries on the planet. America is only 228 years old. Russia totally reinvented. Germany, France, the revolution after revolution, all of Africa, Australia. So America says, well, this is not who we are. It's exactly who you are. And you have been since you built a country using slaves and decided, well, we'll redefine our Constitution. Anyway, I'll stop there.
It's all I've seen the past few days on social media stuff is Americans just annoyed at the government after this gun thing, the issue in Texas. But it's good to see people actually are saying something. Whether anything will come of it, of course not. But it's good that people are saying something for once.
Yeah. The trouble is the government on a federal level can only they banned assault rifles, for example, and AR-15s, which was the originator of the M16. The Bushmaster, and I think it was Clinton, banned the sale of them, and all the mass killings went down, and now they're back, and everyone's bought them. There's hundreds of millions of them out there. It's pointless to say, well, we banned them now, nobody will die. Of course, I mean, these poor people in Buffalo. This guy targeted them because they're black.
Yeah,
that was it. And everybody says, "Oh, mental health. That's the reason." Yeah, right.
It's getting quite boring, isn't it? Boring. It's like that's the answer they go for every single time.
Yeah.
Oh well, we need to lock him away. You know, he needs help.
And so, in retrospect, they look at the social media and all his friends, and everyone said, "Oh, he was so quiet." You know, the usual trumped up things, and that's not the point at all. Unless we do what I forget that Tom Cruise Spielberg film. It was a futuristic film where they would plot someone's behavior and arrest them before they remember that film?
I think I know the film you're about. I can't remember what it's called though.
Yeah, well, that would be the only method now that everyone exposes themselves completely. Have an algorithm that tracks someone's website or their Facebook page and their Snapchat or whatever. Arrest them now.
Was it Minority Report?
Yep, that was it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
Sorry, it took me a second. I was looking at the file decks in my brain while you were talking.
Yeah. I think that was the first time Spielberg and Janusz Kaminski worked together. But enough about other people.
Yes.
First
Let's talk about you.
Oh yeah. So like I said, ask me anything because I've done a lot of different things.
Love it. Well, what we normally do first is I'll do a little intro, just welcome everyone who's listening to the show to this episode, and then, as Tom normally likes to say, we'll bombard the living hell out of you with questions. How does that sound?
Sounds good. I'm ready to be bombarded.
Beautiful. Right, let's do this intro. Ladies and gentlemen, today we bring you a first of its kind guest for us. As you know, we like to bring you people who work behind the scenes in entertainment, the unsung heroes, as it were. Today's guest has used his eyes and his skills as a Hollywood cinematographer on some of your favourite projects. Like what, you ask? How about Scream, Me, Myself and Irene, The Fly, and even Freddy Got Fingered? Boys and girls, these are the Chronicles of Mark Irwin.
A pleasure a pleasure to have you here.
And thanks for bringing up Freddy Got Fingered. That's one of my...
I love that film.
Yes.
Yeah, I've got it down as well.
Triple award winner, worst film ever made, worst performance, and worst director, all thanks to Tom Green. So I feel somehow I had Nickelodeon slime of Freddie all over me. I'm honored nonetheless.
It's just that goat. Is it the goat skin or whatever? Or he's on the motorway. He goes,
The deer, yeah.
Oh, the deer. That's it. Oh my god.
Oh dear, yeah.
I'm sorry, but any film that rigs up a system of sausages and keyboards is a winner for me.
Well, it's weird because I will go to different cities. I was shooting in Atlanta, for example, and done the films you mentioned, and the local crew, behind the scenes guy. Oh yeah, you did that. Oh, you did The Fly. Oh yeah, really. RoboCop. Huh? You did Freddy Got Fingered. Oh my God. Hey guys, he did Freddy Got Fingered. He's the guy. It used to be Grandma's Boy. It used to be Vampire in Brooklyn. But, these are all market movies. That's what cameramen do, or cinematographers do, and apply our craft to, because I don't dictate who's in it and what's it about. I just, that's my motto, literally. It says on my business card, I don't write them, I just light them. So you guys write it.
I like it.
That's all it could ever be.
That's incredible. Amazing. That is amazing. But Mark, I suppose we should start off with an absolute banger and really get to the hard hitting stuff straight away. How has the last 2 years been for you with the pandemic?
Here's what the inverse of logic. The logic would be that everyone's been in lockdown and had to wear a mask and quarantine, and they couldn't go anywhere. Everyone was watching streaming stuff, and in fact, other networks responded to Netflix and said, we'll do the same thing. That's why Netflix, I just had a series that I was going to start next month. And Netflix said, well, we're pulling the financing from it. So, and they decided no more, I shouldn't say no more, but not as much. So the last 2 years, I've never been this busy ever.
Really?
Because Netflix wanted streaming product or content, as they call it. So before, I currently do a lot of work for a company called Airbud Entertainment that is in Vancouver, and it's kids, dogs, and special and visual effects. The three things you're never supposed to do ever together, and that's all we did. But it used to be with their deal with Disney. Disney would say, "Well, we want a script. Oh no, we got to rewrite, and we got this draft and that, and now we want a pilot. Okay, here's the problem with the pilot, and we need recast." Netflix just said, just shoot it. Kids and dogs, great, do it. We don't care. Just send it the whole series, because they wanted stuff to put on screen. So last year I did 2 series. The year before, another 2 series. I also did a film in the Cayman Islands starring Nick Cage and Ron Perlman. And that was kind of outside of the world of streaming. It was an indie film. What's interesting, since Cayman is an island with 81,000 people who live there, it became literally an island. And they said, no more cruise ships. Nobody comes. To get on a plane, you have to be vaccinated and tested. What's the latest? You get off the plane and say, come this way. They test you again. stick you in quarantine. If you've been vaccinated, you're in quarantine for 8 days. After that point, you don't have to wear a mask. And so that was completely liberating. So this was, I won't try to evaluate where the money came from. I can only guess that Cayman has some money floating around, and they wanted to invest, and it was a tax dodge and so on. That's fine. But in the end, Ron Perlman was there for a film. They did 4 films in a row. They brought everything, the whole crew from Canada. I'm Canadian, but I live in Los Angeles. And Ron Perlman was in the first film, and he said, well, okay, I guess I got to get back on a plane. The next director said, hey, Ron, what do you think of this character? Great, perfect, I'll take it. Now he was in the second film. And then he did the third film. So the whole crew was sunburned, these lazy Canadians who left Toronto in January, and I got there in March, and it was, completely 5-star hotels, completely empty, except for the film crew.
No way.
Because no one could, normally you'd have a 2-week quarantine, and normally you have a 2-week vacation. So you'd fly to Cayman to stay in a hotel room for 2 weeks and then leave. So virtually nobody came, other than people who had timeshare, they'd stay a couple of months. But that's what I did in the last 2 years.
That's nuts. It's just, I was expecting to be like, oh yeah, spent time at home. It was really nice, chilled out, blah, blah, blah. I was not expecting to be like, oh yeah, flew to the Cayman Islands and filmed 4 movies.
Yeah.
That's
insane.
And
it's the hair on fire kind of demand for streaming services, so much so that everyone else said, well, that's where the money is. And then Hulu and Prime, Showtime, and everybody. In America, I have Apple TV. I click on it and the whole world steps up. Prime, everything. And Netflix said, well, we started it all. And HBO Max says, no, we started it all. So I was planning on being in Vancouver next week. Now it's all kind of evaporated. So I'm not hoping the pandemic comes back, though. That's a whole other inverse logic there.
So take us back, Mr. Irwin. Take us back to the days of young Master Irwin, when you were a young boy. What did you want to be when you grew up? Was it always an interest in film and photography, or did you just come out of nowhere?
Well, to be honest, my family, my father and mother, both good Baptists. She was from a Mennonite family that left. Your viewers are going to have to figure out what a Mennonite is, but it's kind of like an Amish. They were German. The Schmidts became the Smiths, and the Irwins left after my grandfather was a union leader and a strike leader, and there was a great strike in 1927 that shut down everything because the coal valley said, we want more money, so you won't get any coal. So they ended up in Canada, both for different reasons. And when my parents got married during the war, 1939, my American friends say, you mean after Pearl Harbor? Yeah, right. No, the rest of us started a little earlier. But the family tradition is and always has been family snapshots. And my grandmother on my mother's side, who was very intrepid, would take pictures. And with a folding Kodak, it was called a coronet camera. There are many, many models. And then she would print them in her bathroom, and they get all these little kit of solution stuff, and you'd you'd print it by holding the negative out the window into the sunlight against a piece of paper on a little vacuum form with a piece of glass. This was 1800, late 1800s, and then you'd print it in the bathroom. And so I grew up with family albums. Nothing but family albums and photographs, layers and layers of photographs. Kind of drives me crazy thinking about it, but that's how I thought, well, this is how we see the world, this as a family. So what I still tell my operators, this is all about heads in a box. Don't get too grand about the ceiling and the shimmery and the water. It's all about heads in the box, and that's what snapshots are. So that expanded now I was seeing things as opposed to just playing football or whatever. Early in life, and I mean 1955, I was only 5 years old. I was shown how to use the film strip projector in my Sunday school class. I was shown how to thread it but I was told, don't plug it in and turn it on. The thought being, of course, that I'd electrocute myself. And this was Joseph and His Coat of Many Colors, something I won't forget.
Wow.
And I threaded it and then looked through it without turning the light on. And I saw in the gate that the image was upside down and backwards. And I thought, man, I've screwed this up. So I took it all apart and rewound the reel, threaded it again, flipped it around. Now I could read it, Joseph and His Coat of Many Colors, in the gate. And the Sunday school superintendent, who happened to be my father, that's how I got this cushy job.
Oh, yeah.
He came back and said, "Oh, right, yeah, all done." He had a Welsh accent. He flips the light on, turns power on, and the image on the screen is upside down and backwards. No, what have I done? So that's when I realized taking pictures is one thing, projecting them is another. So that's where it all started. Literally, that's where it all started. Film strip projectors, slide projectors, 16 millimeter projectors. I was the AV kid in my Sunday school class, all through public school, which went from, at that point, first grade 1, in Canada it's called grade 1, to grade 8, and then in high school from grade 9 to grade 13 in Ontario. I was a projectionist and the AV kid. So what that meant is I would have, and I'm sure you've seen this in American movies, it was the norm, a film projector or a slide projector, mostly a film projector, and on a cart, and on the cart would carry the screen if this classroom needed it, and then reels and reels of film. And I'd roll this down the hallway into a classroom and project this film, and then take it all apart and go to another classroom, project it again. So this was, I realized later on, this was blockbuster for me in the 1950s. I was able to see films again and again and again. And rather than being bored like those knuckleheads in the classrooms who couldn't care less, I was watching them and studying them. And one thing that's common all across Canada is the National Film Board of Canada, which was started by a famous Scotsman called John Grierson, who started at the GPO, the General Post Office, filmmaking division in London, pre-war, during the war, and then he came to Canada and set up the National Film Board to show Canada to Canadians. And every school had the latest and greatest documentary about Canada, whether it was literally about people log rolling or snowshoeing or doing something very Canadian. And I would watch these films, and when it was my little duties were over, I would still go to class and run around. I'd take them to my little AV room and then run the projector again. Ostensibly, Mr. Heathcote was the guy I remember who was in charge, had the keys. And I said, no, I have to test this. I make sure it's all right. And I was studying them. And that's when I realized that these films weren't made by themselves. Somebody made them. And those credits would appear at the beginning, the head and the tail of the movie. And that's when I realized, somebody is taking these pictures. They're motion pictures, but someone is taking these pictures. So I was, to clarify things for your podcasters, Canada is a big place. And as of now, there's 6 million French Canadians. And when I say French Canadians, it isn't just a language, it's a whole culture, it's everything. So the National Film Board's head office was in Montreal. And English Canada, which is Ontario and basically the rest of the country, there's patches of Quebecois, French Canadians. We did not have the same artistic background and filmmaking ability. The people that I watched and tracked were French Canadian cameramen and directors, Claude Jutras, Michel Brault, Jean-Claude Labrec. These guys were documentarians, and I was at age 9, 10, 11, 12. That's all I did, study them so that I could learn. There was no internet. There were no books. There was nothing, just these little cans of film. So I had this unique slice that separated myself from my friends. I mean, I played hockey, I played lacrosse, but I remember the moment when I realized this isn't me. Going over from a lacrosse competition over the Burlington Skyway Bridge, which is kind of a big, tall bridge near Hamilton. and looking out the window and seeing the shimmer on the water of Burlington Bay that this bridge was crossing over. And I pointed it, look at that. And my friends look, what? No, see that, the light? What? They were lacrosse players and hockey players, and I was that plus someone who had an eye. And that's where it began for me, taking pictures like my grandmother, taking pictures with an Anscochrome camera, taking pictures with a Pentax Spotmatic, and developing them and printing them in my basement and learning. And that's when I started learning. There was a publishing company called Focal Press, Focal Press, which was British. And they examined everything from a photographic standpoint and then got into cinematography. And that was my Bible until I found the American Cinematographer's Manual. But that's a whole other chapter.
So for people that aren't aware, that was fascinating, by the way. I love the idea of your grandmother hanging photo, like the negatives out the window, and then trying to, like, that must have taken some work to sort of, and obviously I imagine you couldn't have the light on, could you? Because obviously that ruins the photo. Is that correct?
Yeah. So she would process the negative, and they were 2x3. They were kind of this big.
Yeah.
And put the photosensitive paper in the dark, and then put the neg on top of that, and then glass on top of that. And then the sunshine would be the light, the only light around.
Yeah.
That would shine through the neg to the paper. And then you'd literally time it at 1,000, 2,000, whatever. It all came with a manual. Here's what's interesting. I'm sure you've heard of the Kodak Brownie camera, also known as the box Brownie. And Kodak, George Eastman came up with this. He realized he was asking a lot of consumers, really, was what they were, but they were people who lived in small towns who wanted to take pictures. And he said, here's the deal. You buy this camera and it's a box. You look in you'd hold the box like this and look down, and that was how you framed the shot. It comes with 100 photographs, or a roll of film that will now allow you to take 100 photographs. You take 100 photographs, whether it took one afternoon or 1 year. Then, and this is marketing at its finest, you would mail this entire camera back to Kodak in Rochester, New York. And then they would process it, print it, put in a new roll of film, and send it back to you by the mail. And that was kind of like the early version of Netflix, where you'd get a CD, DVD back and forth in the mail, your own photographs, and you'd send the camera away. Amazing.
That's incredible.
That was popular photography. There still is a magazine called Popular Photography, and you look in the archives, and that's what it was: snapshots.
Imagine though, you spent a year, you've taken all these photos, sent off, they come back, you're like, I'm a thumb over the lens in every one of them. God damn it.
Well, yeah, we all learned. I certainly learned that way with the bad exposure. But all through high school, I was shooting films. We had Super 8. There's something called Double 8. Are you familiar with 8mm, by the way?
Yeah, those Super 8s, yeah.
Super 8, yeah. So Super 8 was, imagine this little tiny fingernail. That's the size of a Super 8mm frame. And my thumbnail is 16mm frame. So there's not a lot of information. We all have our little reference sizes in our own hands. You look down at it and think, boy, that's not much there. But the original 8mm came from 16mm cut in half. And there were cameras, which I had, a Bolex Double 8 camera that would shoot 16mm. And let's pretend 16 is this wide and 8mm is this wide. It had a gate that exposed this much, and you'd run it through and expose only half of the reel. And then you take it out, turn it around, and thread it again. And now the unexposed side would be over here, and it would get exposed. So Double 8, this is weird to think, I'm sure it was the same in the UK, that you would take your film to the chemist in Canada, and it's called the drugstore, and they would somehow send it on and process it. And so all of our stuff would end up, and where the guy taking prescriptions was, okay, your film stock, and it was that's just the way it was. So it was quite odd.
Yeah, I remember this. It reminds me of 1 Hour Photo. I love that film.
Yeah.
Yeah, where they just go, they'd obviously just be like looking through it going, yeah, it's fine. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, what is that? Is that? No, well, you can't have that. Sorry. But you can have these.
No,
Yeah,
right.
Incredible. Absolutely. Yeah.
Is that
But-
your mum? Sorry, mate. I'll take that. Put that in the file. It's all right.
So, what exactly does a cinematographer do? What exactly how would you describe it?
It's now that is a very simple and a very complicated question, and
Okay.
I'll put it in reference because the mechanics of filmmaking, and I will use the description in the film business. It's now turned into the multimedia digital business. So, but from a labor standpoint, cinematography, a cinematographer he's in a center point between production, which is to say the producer, the writer, the director, and I'll stop there, the director. And on the other side of me, the cinematographer, I have a grip crew who does all the riggings and the dollies and cranes and technicranes and everything. A lighting crew, which kind of speaks for itself, but it does get bigger, especially when it comes to pre-lights and giant balloons and all sorts of stuff. And then a camera crew. So I'm the guy in the middle. I have one director, a bunch of producers, a lot of the money, the studio or the network, writers, the rewriters, all that sort of stuff. That I call that, that's the creative side. And the mechanical side, I have easily, now it's expanded into visual effects and optical effects and special effects. So all of that has to kind of funnel through this ear, and the other ear has to expand to talk to someone. On one side, I have the creative people and the money people, and the other side, I have the nuts and bolts people. And that can go. When we did RoboCop, we had a crew of 200 with second units and flying unit, all kinds of stuff. So the cinematographer's job is to corral all of these needs, wants, demands, limitations, and mechanical necessities, and turn it into. And I just tell people we're just telling a story with pictures. So I am the guy that literally controls the picture. How these heads fit in a frame, how these cars crashing will fit in a frame, which camera, which lens, how many cameras, what frame rate, how fast is slow. Slow motion is shot with a high-speed camera. Normally we shoot at 24 frames a second. That's how that was Edison's idea. 24, that should do. That was it. Okay, 24 frames. So we're still kind of stuck with that. But to make something go slower in the air, as opposed to zoom, we want it to go, whoa. Now I have to shoot it at 48 frames and project it at 24. Or I have to shoot it at 96 frames. At 48 frames is twice as slow or half as fast. And it's an arithmetic. 96 frames is 4 times slower. So this is all math. One thing that happens with, for example, I shot a Jackie Chan film in Hong Kong, 72 days in Hong Kong and 36 days in New York. In Hong Kong, I had 5 cameras every day, and every imaginable fight and stunt and people out jumping out, the usual Jackie Chan stuff. The thing to remember is when you shoot slow motion, and a lot of it you need more light to allow you to lose the same amount of light that you used to get at 24 frames. Now it's going like this, and you have to compensate. So all of this chemistry and, the mechanical part of photography, cinematography, that's in my brain. The left brain, the right brain talks to the director. And what mood do we want? What camera move do we want? It's just, I shot The Fly, and I shot Mighty Ducks Part 2, for example, or There's Something About Mary. I wouldn't want The Fly to look like There's Something About Mary, or Scream to look like Mighty Ducks. So I have to then apply the mood, the style, the lighting, and I keep all the I tell. We had a master class at the ASC last week, and everyone asked all these technical questions. I said, "Here's the technical answers. Put them all in your back pocket. Don't talk about them to the director. He doesn't care what your t-stop is, what your frame rate is, what the aspect ratio is. He wants to tell a story. So now I'm dealing with David Cronenberg and saying, deep down inside, this is a horror film, but even deeper, this is a love story. So I want to be able to convey that, and I have to deal with literally the mechanics of lighting Jeff Goldblum in his final Naugahyde, what's what we call it, rubber on rubber on rubber on rubber. I have to light him. This is a mechanical thing. 2 to 3 times brighter, just so the film stock would see him as something dark. If I didn't light him brighter, he would just be a shadow. So now I want texture and a rim light here and detail light here and something in his eyes and all that stuff. At the same time, here's Jeff Goldblum in the frame, and here is Gina Davis. At the end, she's saying, don't do this. You can't. I said to David, this is a love story. Well, it's not really a love story. Well, to the audience, it is. And definitely, if you've seen the original Fly, it really is. So Gina became the benchmark of their love relationship, and Jeff would deteriorate. I wanted to keep her with romantic lighting, always this halo of light. But for them to be in the same shot, and this is all about film, there was no power windows and everything you do now digitally. She had to be twice as dark as he had to be twice as bright, because she had very luminous skin. And for the mood of the scene, as the set kind of deteriorated when he started transforming further and further into insecthood, she was the baseline that came and said, "Don't do this. I love you." And so, to make a long story short, there's a certain point at the end where they come closer to each other. The light here is bright as hell and lots of shadows. The light here is much darker and with a kind of glamour look to it. And I couldn't have them in each other's light. And they kept leaning into each other's light. Oh. And no matter what you say, people will lean. So I finally said, here's a simple solution. And I took a piece of thread, we call it monofilament or fishing line, taped it to the floor and ran it straight up to a gobo arm, which is a grip thing, and said, "This is the line. You can see it. The audience can't see it. If you know you're going to go over this line because you're in front of this thread, now you're past it, don't do that." So after 5 takes of them screwing up, I said, "This is the answer. Please respond." And so what you see in the film is literally stitched together with thread, but that's how we did it. So to answer your question, what does a cinematographer do? He does everything.
That's great. Literally,
And,
sorry.
Well, that's just a coda to that, yeah.
That's insane. Just to have all that knowledge, but be able to talk to the director or the producer in a way that's not technical, but then still the same exactly, is just, I'd be there going, you do things and I'll talk to you in a minute. And I don't know what's going on. And I'd probably scream and cry and run out the building, to be honest with you.
Well, here's the thing on top of all of that, as if this isn't enough of a pyramid, on top of it is somebody saying, okay, we have to do this in a 12-hour day. So it's what I call art with a stopwatch. And you can get in a cab and they put the flag down and now the meter's running. That's every day. You'll have a first AD who is an integral part of making the film on set, on the day, as we say. And he's the regimental sergeant major. All right, everybody, okay, we're back, we're in. And it isn't like, sure, take your time. The meter's running. So everything that I have to deal with from my mechanical side and the artistic side, I have to absorb and say, no problem, 10 minutes, maybe 6 minutes, because the AD is bringing in the actors. He's getting them into makeup or into horror makeup, or they're preparing for a big performance, and they have to get into character. So all of this is balancing. We're spinning plates on sticks, and hopefully none of them will crash. I've been doing this for 50 years, so apparently nothing's crashed yet.
Yeah, which is good. I doubt anything will now, to be honest, Mark. So do you, I imagine, do you see scripts and stuff, or do you have ideas of what the movies are about before you get involved with what you're going to put this and do that and do the other thing? Or is it literally, this is what I want, this is how it's going to work, off you go?
Quite often the scripts that I get early on are a draft that will change. So it's etched in Jello. It's not really etched in stone, and that's fine because it is motion pictures. That's why I joke and say that's why I call the movies. We keep moving shit around. So that's my job, to take words and turn them into imagery. The director, sometimes you get creative producers who will try to elbow the director and say, no, isn't it? We talked about this and this is, so I'm the guy in the middle saying, well, you guys work it out. There are many films I did RoboCop 2, and that was kind of, here we go again. It was a sequel to the original RoboCop. So we weren't going to stray too far. And then I did Scream, which was, that was the third film I did with Wes. And he was reinventing things. This was the first film that Dimension did, the horror division of Disney, and the two Weinstein brothers were in charge. And they went crazy. They said, you want us to pay Drew Barrymore $1 million to be in the movie and kill her before the first credits, before the movie starts? Yes. So that's when layers and layers and layers and layers of intrigue enter into it, and I can insert myself or abandon ship. So that's my job, to carry a story again on time and on budget, and that's the unknown. It's funny, you talk about David Cronenberg and Wes Craven. They're two different people, and yet two masters of horror, whatever their crown says on it. But David and Wes could not be more different. David because he wrote everything and rewrote it and rewrite on the day, and here it is, and everyone, okay, to direct the scene, to block it, he wanted the actors, the script supervisor, and me, and everyone else had to leave. He had no shot list, no storyboards, nothing. And it would grow from there. And I and myself and the script supervisor would literally write, scribble on the back of sides, which are the day's dialogue. Many sides were cut in half. So the little tiny thing, that would be the kind of experiment that all the ingredients go into the test tube and it would bubble up, and here's how we do it. So everything you saw in The Fly, in the Dead Zone, and Scanners, and Videodrome, that was not off the cuff or seat of the pants kind of impromptu. He and I had seen these locations. We knew where things would happen. Quite often locations will tell you the camera goes here, because here's the windows, here's the doorway, I can hide this. He's going to come in. And so, okay, now this is what people do. Wes was totally different. Wes Craven would show up not with storyboards and a shot list, and he'd hand the shot list out to everybody, right down to craft service and the drivers. Everyone knew what was planned for that day, and then he would block it very matter of fact. I don't need the actors. No, they come in here. He goes up the staircase, comes back with the gun or the knife. Okay, and we work it out with second team, with the stand-ins. And Wes would sit in a corner in front of his monitor with his reading glasses, and he would do the crossword puzzle. He was New York Times crossword puzzle. And if you're like me, you will go, let's see, you'd hunt and peck and figure it out. He would go through it like a chainsaw, everything. He was that together as in himself. And, oh, you ready? Okay, he'd take off his reading glasses, put on the other glasses, go and direct. So to him, it was like Hitchcock, this is part of we're making a brick wall, and this glues to this, and that glues to that. And David would look instead for the core of it, find the emotion, find the passion, and see where characters. And I to me, that's the best, to see an actor. Normally, I'm talking to you like this, and I'd have a stand-in, I'd light it. Okay, this is what we're going to do. And the actor would come in and do the scene like this. And suddenly all the lighting for this, that's got to change. And so I like to get a head start. If Jimmy Woods is going to do the scene like this, I'm going to tell the stand and do this as opposed to this. But yeah, that's kind of the, I forget the origin of all this blather. I hope I answered it.
That Wes Craven story really made me laugh, because everyone that knows me, I'm a huge Kevin Smith fan. And there's a scene in one of his movies called Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, and Wes Craven's in it, does a cameo. And literally, they say something to him, and he's just sat there doing the crossword. And he's like, "What is it? I'm busy." And to know that is based on real life, that is brilliant. That's amazing.
And Wes was, as a writer and as kind of an inventor, I mean, he invented Freddy. He started the Scream, Chronicles, basically, to crib your phrase. But there are many passionate and then dispassionate people who approach their job accordingly. And I'm the one in the middle who either steps back as, the bullets fly. When we did Dumb and Dumber, Peter and Bobby had never been on a set before. And they had been. They wrote one Seinfeld episode, and they were on the set, like the studio audience kind of set, but at MTM Studios. But they would quite literally look at the first AD. No, okay, action. And then we'd shoot, and things would kind of dwindle and fizzle. No, okay, cut. And that's how they learned. I myself, the first AD, production designer, and the editor, we kind of trained them. Dumb and Dumber, Kingpin, and Something About Mary, the first 3 films we did with them. And they would invent it on the way as well. Here's the truth about storyboards and shot lists. Some people who, they're laying out linoleum. It's just, this is where it goes. There's the pattern. Boom. And everyone says, that's the linoleum. Other people will say, well, if I have a shot list and I don't get all the shots, then the producer looks at me as not having made my day. A wish list is what a shot list is. And I know, I talk this through with directors who, well, this scene and this scene and this scene and this scene. Well, it's a 12-hour day and we have 7 scenes. We can't, let's look on each of these scenes as a basket. Do we put all our eggs in every basket? Because we don't have that many eggs. And we've got to, if we have a exposition, a page and a half, guy and a girl talk, let's dolly with the talk, and stop. And the guy turns, now we're over his shoulder, we all reverse, and we've got 2 pages in 2 shots. Do another one, they come down the staircase, we push in and they say, you're right, I've got to exit frame. Okay, these are all beats. The scene where she and he argue and they break up, that's the basket that needs all the eggs, needs all the coverage. And that's where we're going to settle in. First scene after lunch, that's usually when everyone's kind of found their level. So that's another part of my job, to be the kind of invisible force saying we have to do this, without saying we have to do this. I literally would say, our call time's 7. So at 2:00, where do we want to be? And it's not him alone with a typewriter writing. There's people everywhere. And where do we want to be? Because, this is a whole mile's worth of trucks and cable and lights and equipment and pressure. I think we should, I can do that in a single and then a reverse. And then I want to spend some time. So first shot after lunch, we'll give the grips early lunch. They'll set the track, they'll fly the overheads. Everything will be ready when you come back. Why don't you run through the scene with the actors during lunch and they get warmed up to it. So this is, we're not laying bricks anymore. This is sculpture. And part of it is to make sure that you hit the chisel in the right way and nothing crack falls.
What I'm getting from this is people think the director's in charge. The director thinks the director's in charge, but really the cinematographer's in charge.
Well, yes, in the sense that this is now we're kind of we're on the river heading for the falls, and whoever is paddling up front says, I think we should go this way so we don't all fall. The director's job is to fit in with all of us. He sees it as our job to fit in with what he wants. And if you're David Fincher, that's quite true. If you have enough money, or if you are Peter Jackson with the big scope to things, you can literally call the shots. I mean, that's where the term comes from. So I find it ironic when people are interviewed about a film on kind of market television, Entertainment Tonight sort of thing. They talk to the actors and the director. So apparently they were the only people there. Made by itself.
That's exactly like I was saying in my intro there. That is something we like to do, speak to these people who work in the background that don't get enough. We spoke to a costume designer before, and the detail she's going through, she puts into this work that you see in these characters. I'm like, no one's ever thought to highlight the amount of work that woman has done.
Right.
And it's nuts.
And, I mean, set designers, set decorators, set painters, carpenters, production designers, art directors. That's far outside of my mechanical world. I deal with a gaffer, who's the chief lighting technician, and a key grip. In America, it's different than the UK. So the grip and electric departments are kind of equally huge. And then a camera crew. And now I'll break the line. Now we're into the digital. We're in the present day, which has kind of been around for the last 20 years, and changes constantly. Aeroflex, a German company, is bringing out a new camera on May 31st. And that happens, everything happens all the time. You have to keep up. I can't keep up because I don't want to. I want to hire people who do that. I mean, I realized the first house that I ever renovated back in the 70s, this drywall I was putting up was making a mess of it. And I'm covered in drywall dust and everything. And I realized, wait a minute, I would not ask a guy who does drywall to shoot a feature. Why do I think I can do his job? So everyone has a purpose and everyone has a place and everyone feeds into what the director wants. And he can take credit for that, or he can hide the fact that that's the standard joke. And this is pretty common, that the entry-level job on set is a PA and director. Because the truth is, everyone on set works all the time. And a director will direct a 7 or 8 day episode of Wonder Girl or the Flash or something. He'll do an 8 day episode once a year. So unless you're Ridley Scott, who in between features does commercials and music videos, he's basically constantly training for the marathon that is shooting a feature film. But if any of us say, yeah, okay, I'm good, let's do the marathon. No, you're not in shape. You have to not only train yourself, but train yourself to be part of this art with a stopwatch game. And that's when I look around everybody, all my crew, how can I lean on you to rig this in 10 minutes instead of an hour? And I can look this way while you rig it that way, and then we'll come back and it'll be ready. So that is the crossword puzzle. This goes here, the jigsaw puzzle, how we make our days. But yeah, a director has to answer the question of the producer and the production manager and the line producer and the studio and the network, did you make your day? Suddenly it isn't about, oh yes, I see this on the red carpet at Con. No. Did you make your day? Did you get all the shots? And that's the tightrope that they don't walk alone. But if the film's a success, I walk that tightrope all alone. And if it's a failure, those goddamn cameraman, what did he do?
So obviously the amount of different types of projects you've worked on and different films and different types of scenes in films, what is your favorite type of scene to work on? With it, like a romance, an action scene, whatever it may be? Is there a certain favorite you like to work on?
That's a very pointed question, and I have the inverse answer, because there are high points in every film that I've done. My favorite film, just so everyone knows, is a film I did with Danny Glover and Gene Hackman called BAT, BAT-21, which is a code name for an aircraft. It's a Vietnam War rescue kind of film. And something about Mary and Mighty Ducks, and let me just look at some credits here.
That's how you know you've done a lot of work, when you have to look at your own credits to remember what you've worked on.
I honestly, it goes back a long way, but the last film that I shot on film was called Dance Flick, which is a Wayans brothers comedy, and their deal was to wait a couple of years so that all these films would come out and become popular, so then they could make fun of them. And that was kind of their. I did Scary Movie 3 as well. That was the template for Scary Movie.
Oh.
Wes Craven movies would come out and they make fun of them in 1, 2, 3, 4. So to answer your question, there are, in my mind, there's not a favorite kind of film that has a scene that I like. I confide with my camera crew specifically that if I can finish any day of shooting, 12, 13, 14, 16 hours, whether it's days or nights or, pounding rain, if I can finish that one day satisfied with one shot, then I'm a happy person. And so in Bat 21, which is a very, very difficult film, that's my favorite because it was like climbing a mountain with both feet tied behind your back. It was just brutal. Shooting in Borneo in the jungle with an very inexperienced crew. Then the inverse of that is RoboCop, shooting in Houston with a very, very innovative VisFX crew. And so I guess I'm saying what I'm sharing is the high points of these films are what kind of linked me together, and that's what I feel good about. It was very gratifying when the final scene of The Fly, when basically he's what's the word, murdered or slaughtered. I mean, she kills him with a double barrel shotgun to the forehead as mercy killing, and that's when I told David this is how you end movies. When we did the Dead Zone, Johnny Smith is shot by the Greg Stilson's bodyguard, and he falls from the balcony and lands and dies in the arms of Brooke Adams. And David said, "That's perfect." And Dino De Laurentiis said, "Oh no, we need an ending." Well, this is the end. No, we need, and we shot 3 more endings to that. One with her and Herbert Lom in front of this temple, this weird temple in Ontario, and basically a talk down, and tested that. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't work. Try something else. Carol Spear, the production designer, built an entire carnival with a roller coaster, built it all so they could have another walk and talk that she could ride alone with her son on the roller coaster, and slow motion and fade to black kind of thing. No, that didn't work. I forget. We did another scene. In the end, the movie was a freeze frame of him and her with blood on her white sweater at a high angle. So it's hard to pin yourself on this as a contributor, as a collaborator with the director when there are other layers involved, and everything finds its own level. It floats to its own particular surface. And in the end, that's what the audience wanted. That was how the film ended. So that scene, for those reasons, becomes, a favorite or important to me. Working with Irv Kershner on RoboCop 2, here's a guy. Now I'll ask you, do you know who Irv Kershner was?
The name sounds familiar, especially the surname, but
yeah, Irvin Kershner, an old Hollywood director who ended up teaching at USC, which had a strong film program back in the day and still does. And I'll leap over that for a minute. George Lucas directed Star Wars, and against all odds, it became, because Fox kept saying, "Oh, it's this Buck Rogers movie." Yeah, give him what he wants. He wants the rights for the toys. Yeah, who cares? Give him that. Merchandising, we don't care. Stuffed animals, doesn't matter. So when the Empire Strikes Back came around, everybody in Hollywood now knew who George Lucas was, and everyone, Brian De Palma, everyone wanted a hand on that sequel. I'm your guy. Yeah, let's do it. And Lucas, who was a soft-spoken kid from the Big Valley in central Modesto in central California. What did he do? He got his old film professor to direct The Empire Strikes Back.
That's why I know that name, of course.
So Kershner who was very skilled and he became the sequel king. And when it came to RoboCop 2, it wasn't like, well, how about this guy? How about we go to this? And Irv is 6'5". We didn't yet call him Yoda, but now I think of him as a 6'5" Yoda. He was that guy. He's the wise one to go to, and it was weird shooting that. number two, Kirsch. Now I've only read Dickens novels when somebody in the novel had the gout, and I'm not really sure what the gout is, but he showed up on set for prep and everything, and he was on crutches because he had the gout, and he was this big, tall, beak-nosed kind of New Yorker. Mark, get that fucking camera over here. Mark, I'm not gonna wait a second longer. What the fuck? And he'd be on a wheelchair, and he'd roll the thing around. Look out, Lane, move your, here's the next setup. No, and so that was what it was like. And that's the inspiration, I think, that we all surge forward and back to these characters.
But saying that, now you just mentioned that RoboCop 2, I didn't want to say, you've done quite a few sequels, like Scary Movie 4 and whatnot. Do you ever look at what's come before it, or the originals, to try and get that same feel, or you're like, nope, this is a new film, this is what I'm going to do?
Yeah, yes and no. I talked with Yost Vacano, who shot first RoboCop, and I can look at it. It's not like, how did they light it? So, not to forget that what I'm continuing has to be in lockstep with the writer, a new director, same actor. But here's what's interesting: we shot RoboCop 2 in Houston. The first one was shot in Dallas. The third one was shot in Atlanta. They were all set in Detroit.
Yeah.
And all we did was show the skyline of the city we were in. And I mean, my family was from Ontario, and right across the river from Detroit was Windsor, Ontario, which gave you the best view of the skyline of Detroit. Nobody ever went there to take a picture of it. So I was always, shouldn't that be the Renaissance Center? Why do we? Doesn't matter. Nobody knows. And so, yeah, there is a continuation that, in fact, when we did Mighty Ducks 2, I'd shot another hockey film with Rob Lowe and Patrick Swayze called Youngblood back in Toronto. And Mighty Ducks 1 was kind of off the shelf, degenerate lawyer has to redeem himself, and these misfit kids. So the second one was kind of in that realm, but the producer was adamant. He said, I want to see these hockey games with lots of shadows on the ice. And me being a hockey player and Canadian said, well, it's not the ice capades. I mean, this is a game. And in fact, the way it was set up, the game was, in fact, kind of the Goodwill Games or something, but it was competitive. It wasn't just an exhibition game. And he wanted kids to skate into pools of darkness and come out with the puck and back and forth. So that was kind of, I had that particular gun to my head, and we would literally cheat. We'd light these pools of light and had other lights above them that were called fill lights, and we would slowly dim them brighter and brighter. So the contrast of jet black and light, we would slowly start filling the shadows, because I just said, I can't do this. I can't have kids win the game, win a goal that was in the dark. I mean, from a competitive standpoint, that doesn't work, but a story, it's just, so anyway, there are continuations. And then there's totally new ones. We kind of cut the template for Scream on all the Scream movies to follow. This was the first film Wes had ever done in anamorphic, which is a different John Carpenter style. Not only a different aspect ratio, but different lenses. And so everything that we put into Scream, the first Scream, everyone said, okay, that's the look. And they would follow along with it. But everyone who shot it and directed it did it their own way. So I guess there's a meshing rather than a complete capitulation. Or whatever you want, I'll make it look like you shot it. I've never fell into that trap. Other than Freddie Got Fingered, of course, that had to be classic Hitchcock style.
So we've spoken about a couple of the directors you've worked with over the years, but you've worked with some huge movie stars over the years, like Jim Carrey's a guy we always talk about on this show, Will Ferrell, Wesley Snipes. Are there some actors that you see that are going to be in a film and you're like, this is going to be a damn good day in the office?
When you mentioned Will Ferrell, Old School was kind of a meeting of Hollywood versus Saturday Night Live TV actors who had a lot of style. And this was a film that's, now if you think of Old School, you don't think of Luke Wilson necessarily first out. You think of Will Ferrell and him running naked down the street.
Yeah.
We're streaking.
And at the time, and this was Hollywood, here's the timeline. Our first day of prep was September 11th, 2001.
Oh.
So it was one of those, And the director lived in what ended up being, they had an official name, but we'll just call it the fall zone, that was all closed off. So his apartment he didn't get back to it for a year. So that was kind of, let's do a comedy with all this. Nonetheless, some of the readings and certainly on the set, Luke Wilson and Gwyneth Paltrow were a couple at that point, 2001. And not that it mattered to any of us on the crew, but they were breaking up as a couple. So Luke would have his little flip phone and he'd be rehearsing and, hold on. Okay, Gwyneth, all that back and forth. And so he just, I don't know if I want to, I'm not feeling it. And Will Ferrell, coming from live TV, which is super competitive amongst your fellow SNL members, well, I'll give it a shot. So he ends up doing the naked run. He ends up doing the tiger that catches on fire, doing the weird rhythm gymnastics with the ribbon. He stole the movie. And and Luke, we call him Luke Warren Wilson, would be, we would be rolling and the slate would be out and you'd mark it and take the slate back. Okay, hold on, don't hang up. And he put it in his pocket and do the scene. Cut. Gwyneth, I lost her. And the whole crew, yeah, that's too bad.
Yeah.
Multi-millionaires, woes, yeah, it's not my problem. So that was interesting. I working with Gene Hackman was a struggle, very much so. One of the least pleasant actors I've ever worked with.
Really?
And which shocked me and everybody else who was thinking, oh yeah, he's Popeye Doyle. As it turned out, we were shooting, as I said, in Borneo. He was in Santa Barbara, and we were supposed to start shooting on Monday. Let's say this was Thursday, and from Santa Barbara across the Pacific to the independent producers in Malaysia, where we were. I've never really spent any time in Hawaii. I really like to, I just. Okay, Gene, how about this? That you spend a week in Hawaii on your way to Borneo. Yeah, okay, great. So, okay, now we have a week to kill and more production and training Malaysian crew, but it wasn't like, yeah. Then from Hawaii, he calls 8 days later. I've never spent any time in Hong Kong. And I've always, since I'm so close to, it seems like, okay, how about that? And so another week, Gene Hackman in Hong Kong. Finally, he gets to the set 2 weeks late. And he hates everybody, including himself. He just got a divorce. He couldn't stand, the director and I had done 2 films at that point. Youngblood was one of them. And his name was Peter Markle, my favorite director. He wasn't afraid of anything. As then it turned out, we both got to be afraid of Gene Hackman. And then it just turned into unpleasantness. And we were shooting in the jungle. This was Gene plays a guy who's an intel general who's been shot down, is now being chased by the VC through the jungle. And we did not have a big budget, and there's no way we could shoot with a Steadicam. We'd lay 100 feet of track, and he'd run along and hide behind a tree and shoot, usual stuff that you do to make movies. And it must be known that in this place called Kota Kinabalu, and your audience can look that one up. It's in Sabah State in Borneo, next to Brunei. It's right on the equator. 6 a.m, 100 degrees and 100% humidity. And it stays that way the whole day. And it wasn't, there was no secret. Gene lives in Santa Barbara. He comes to the tropics. So we had to deal with everything. By the first day he's being chased, he has to tumble down a hill, dodging bullets. Got everything set up. We show him with the stunt double. And he says, that guy, he's too bald. He's too fat. There's no fucking way. No, I have to do my own stunts. Oh, geez. So then he does this half-ass stunt and tears his knee, he claims. So everything's horrible. Day 2, the same kind of mewling and puking. The third day, he shows up on set. And we all got up at 4 a.m. to drive out to these this jungle place. 6 a.m., 6:30, he shows up, gets out of his air-conditioned Mercedes, sunburned, hasn't had makeup or anything, and he looks, what did you want me to choose out the director? The day before, he literally said to the director, "You're going to put the camera there? Oh, fuck." And so all the crew, 90% of whom were Bahasa, were from the region, didn't understand, but the rest of us did. So he finally shows up on the set, and he looks around, sees what the scene is. It's a long lens shot. We have to have these VC guys running, and it's safer for the bullet hits, the whole deal. And he comes up to me. I'm behind the camera, and suddenly poke, poke, poke. Oh, hey, Gene, how are you doing? And he's got this thundercloud look. Says, this fucking film could have been shot in North fucking Carolina. It should have been shot in North Carolina. Oh, you fucking long lens shot. None of the great films ever made had telephoto shots in them. And he's poking me. Every emphasis is like pushing me back from the viewfinder. And I'm trying to, Mr. Nice Guy, and the poor director saying, well, be nice. Hey, Gene, how about Lawrence of Arabia? I mean, there have been a few good films made with telephoto shots. Yuck, yuck. He wasn't having it. And he kept jabbing me and started pushing me. At which point, I was on the verge of saying, none of the great films ever made had Gene Hackman in them.
Yeah.
But suddenly, whoa. And the director pulled me aside. So we ended up 10 weeks in the jungle. And so Gene was not a happy guy. Jim Carrey was a happy guy. I knew him in Toronto. I shot him when he was a teenager, literally. He was 19 years old at the Du Maurier Talent Contest, the Stars of Tomorrow kind of thing. And he was this crazy kid who would do impersonations of Jack Palance and everybody, and he was great. Up until then, he did what he did. It's funny, his first show in America was called The Duck Factory. It was a TV series about an animation company, and he played the straight guy. Why would you hire him to do the straight guy? Well, that's one worth looking up. They had all these old character comedy actors. Finally, he did, and I shot some of The Mask with him. My soon-to-be wife worked with him throughout in Living Color. She was his hairstylist. She did Ace Ventura. And finally, on Dumb and Dumber, hey, Jim, how's it going? Oh, yeah, great. Most of Dumb and Dumber was shot, all the stuff in what was called the Mutt Cuts van, which was that van covered in dog fur and the flappy ears and everything. We would tow that around everywhere. We shot most of it in Salt Lake area in Utah, and also in Colorado. Half of Colorado is mountains, and then it's a dead flat prairie. So people say, did you shoot that in Colorado? Looks like Kansas. Well, it's next to Kansas, and it's not the mountainous part. So we were now in this flat part, towing the Mud Cuts van around with Jeff driving and Jim. And this was now the morning. It was a 7 o'clock call, and Jim is apparently super hungover. Before any Instagram or anything, here's a variety out in the plains, Fort Morgan, Colorado, not a big hub of entertainment news. So the Hollywood Reporter couldn't find it anywhere. But as it turned out, Jim had signed for Ace Ventura 2 and The Mask Part 2 the night before, and he had broken all these box office, or I should say, industry records. He was now the $20 million man, getting $10 million to do these movies. So totally hungover, and oh, way to go, to Jim. Yeah, thanks. And then, so I've set the scene. He's in the passenger seat. Jeff's in the driver's seat. One camera past Jeff and one that's on Jim. We have it lit with an 18K, which is a very bright light, diffused through an 8x8 of grid cloth, which is something that takes a hard light and makes it wrap around a bit. But this is all, if we were shooting at night, I wouldn't need that big light, but we wanted to see what was outside. And it lighted up, and Jim goes to me, come here, Mark, come here. Hey, Jim, hey, how you doing? Looks great. I said, yeah, that light, only one light, that light is making me squint. Yeah, well, we have to balance so we can see. It isn't just burned out. We see the mountains and the prairie and it's making me squint. Okay, all of America is going to see me squint. What do you suggest? Should I turn it on? Yeah, turn it on. Turn it on. All right, let's kill the 18. Click, goes off. And now on the directors are looking at the monitors. Suddenly everything goes black and everything okay? Oh yeah, it's fine. Just so you know, your $20 million hero is now a silhouette. So we're ready. What? And that was the first time. That was 1994. So cell phones were the flip kind, and boom, boom, all these cell phones come out, and all the words go up to a satellite, and they come down to an agent in Hollywood. Well, he did what? And I could see the words going back and forth, dollar bills flying everywhere. And then 5 minutes later, or 10 minutes later, the line producer, who's kind of the nuts and bolts producer, not the money guy, but he's the one who has a money guy glued to his head. Okay, says, yeah, turn the light back on. So Jim hated me from that point on. I made him squint. But those are the mechanical aspects of filmmaking that no one sees. They just see somebody on the screen. And yet to see someone as a silhouette, wait a minute, I paid my money and I don't get to see the guy. I see the black outline.
You must have so much patience in your role to deal with some of the stuff you've got to deal with.
Well, I'm looking through here at for example, Big Mama's House Part 2 with Martin Lawrence. And these are what I call market movies. You can do all kinds of stuff. From a cameraman standpoint, it's great to do different things. His deal was that he had to put on this fat suit, which was literally that. Rubber, all kinds of prosthetics and rubber face and everything. Hot as hell. Where did they pick to shoot this? New Orleans in the summer.
Oh, no.
So we were in what used to be a coffee warehouse. Something I didn't know until I got there, that New Orleans is the port for coffee into America. Makes sense. From South America up the Mississippi, all the warehouses on the water. So we were in this former coffee warehouse, forgetting, of course, that green coffee doesn't smell like, Starbucks. It smells horrible. So this warehouse smelled terrible, but it had these giant Navy chillers, they called them, but they were just giant refrigerators that would blast cold air everywhere. And there were thermometers hanging everywhere because the director promised Martin Lawrence we wouldn't shoot in this 100-degree heat until it was 65 degrees in this coffee warehouse, which was now a set in a studio. So we would wait till this, and we're wearing parkas and you could see your breath. It's crazy. And so we would shoot all these pieces. Now we shoot an over shoulder or over, this was a double wearing kind of the fat face and the wig and the dress for Martin Lawrence. And we would try to do all these scenes. And then when he was ready, come back and do the 2-shot and his close-up. But we couldn't go to lunch until he was ready and we shot something. So our call was 7 and lunch was at 1. And sometimes we'd have lunch at 4 or 5 when we finally got all of his stuff done. So then he could take it up. So it was the same thing with Eddie Murphy on Vampire in Brooklyn.
I love that film. Such a good film.
Well, ask me more about films that you like.
So I'm just loving hearing these stories, but
yeah, I mean, I'm an absolutely massive Jim Carrey fan. I have been for years and years, and I bought his book recently, which I need to start reading. I literally love anything he's in, even if it's a kid's show or whatever. I'll watch it because I just think he's fantastic. But obviously, I don't see the side that you see, Mark. So, Ace Ventura is one of my favorite movies ever. But I noticed he did Me, Myself, and Irene as well with him and Renee Zellweger. So it's I don't know, it's weird. It's almost one of those things where you're like, do I want to know what he's really like, or do I want to keep, that?
Well, Jim had I don't think it was a catharsis as much as just people were sick of him and stopped hiring him. And the internal spot, whatever it was, that of the film, internal spotlight of the something.
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Right.
That's the one.
Lots of double syllable words there. So he took himself seriously. He did a film called The Majestic, and to me, his best film is The Truman Show.
Oh,
Just a great parable for life that continues to be parabolic.
yeah.
He reached the point where people just said, "Well, we don't want to hire him anymore." And then he looked inward and started writing and doing, all his kind of political cartoons, which were very pointed. As I said, my wife was his hairstylist, and we were together for 22 years. In the middle of a show called Liar, Liar, she was doing his hair, and this is after his career was up, and then it kind of started doing this. And he's looking at her in the mirror. She's doing his hair, and he says, "Pauletta, you're just not cutting it." And she said, "Oh, did I miss something? Should I trim it?" No. Yeah, we're done. You're fired. I never want to see you again. So it was like a Tuesday at lunch, like, wait a minute. So he never worked with the same hairstylist since then. When we were 10 years later, we're shooting me, myself, and Irene in Burlington, Vermont. And Pauletta comes to visit me and comes to the set and keeps hiding in this tent and watching the monitor. Doesn't want Jim to see her. And finally he sees her and, "Oh, Pauletta," and he runs and pushes everyone aside, gives her this big hug and says, hold on, that's my phone. Let me, and he says, "Pauletta, where have you been?" "Yeah, you fired me, man. Remember?"
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's Hollywood. And that's Jim. But now I think he's neutralized himself. He's become sort of the sage of whatever it is.
But also going on the movies that he does, Scary Movie 3, for example, Leslie Nielsen is another absolute legend gone way too soon. I was absolutely heartbroken when he passed away in 2010. But what was he like on set? Just because just the way how deadpan he is, the way he delivers things was just beautiful.
Exactly. He unlike the other, apparitions that people, what is Amber Heard really like? Like, okay, well, now we know. But I mean, the term "shit the bed" is now back in vogue. It's
Seeing footage of the phrase "Amber Turd" being said in a court of law will forever be my favorite thing ever.
But Leslie Nielsen was exactly what you'd think. He is this charming, clever guy, a very inquisitive person in the sense that he wanted to know everybody's name. Most actors don't care. Like the focus guy, he can't. Can you see me on that? The B camera guy. None of us have names. He would learn everybody's name.
Legend.
And he's very Canadian. Here's a guy who grew up in the Yukon and a journeyman actor through all those years in Hollywood and Canada, CBC, all those different shows. We all paid our dues. So when you get there, you can either be a prick or you can be a prince. And he is or was a prince. And all his ad libs, that we see of him as ad libs, he would write and rewrite, and he did most of it himself. He liked to write and ricochet off. Oh, what if I? Really great guy. My favorite quote of him playing Frank Drebin, I think it was in Police Story.
Yeah.
He has one scene where they go to a crime scene or looking for clues, and he's got the gun, and he says, "Like a midget at a urinal, I'll have to be on my toes." And no one else could say that. Jerry Seinfeld, well, that's corny, but with him, yeah,
it was great. Absolutely great. That's like a Police Story still when they, I think it's in the first episode when they find someone and they arrest her. And he's like, and the chief of police is like, "Book her and take her away." He's like, "Sergeant Booker, Sergeant, take her away." So I just, so cool. Oh,
These
I
are
love
great
him.
traditions. I mean, Canadian, British humor. I think we can all share that we know who Tony Hancock and Sid James and Hattie Jakes. Nobody in America has a clue. But someone from Canada does. And then he also knows who Henny Youngman is and Lenny Bruce. And that was the mind of Jim Carrey, for that matter, and Mike Myers, and Lorne Michaels and Leslie Nielsen. So they knew their roots expanded beyond setup, punchline, but next. And that's what I appreciated with guys like that, because you could talk beyond standard deli humor or toilet humor.
There is one film, I was just looking through IMDb as we're talking. The one that stands out for a weird way, just like it became quite controversial if memory serves. That's The Ringer, the Johnny Knoxville Special Olympics movie.
Right.
How was that to film? Because obviously you're working with people that aren't necessarily actors at times as well.
Yeah, and Peter and Bobby were very. Now, if you look at their films, you will always, especially Something About Mary. I'm blanking on his name. Let's see if I can look it up. They grew up with a mentally challenged friend, as did I, for that matter. Maybe everyone's got a community that, in this case, what was his name? Almost got it. It was Warren. Have you seen My Baseball? Remember that character in Something About Mary?
Yes.
So they were always aware of, and the real Warren would be in most of their films as a background actor, or in the scenes with Something About with Mary, she would give out these fast food lunches to these kids, and one of them is Warren, the real Warren. So they were always comfortable with that. And when they wrote and cast The Ringer, they knew they had to have, in fact, I think there's only one Down syndrome character, but most of them, half the cast was mentally challenged, and they were in a theater company or theater companies, and they would, the exhausted search, spanning the globe, but they find most of these guys in Florida. And we shot The Ringer in, sad to say, San Antonio and Uvalde, Texas. Not the right place to think of that, but and San Marcos, Texas. So the cast would pair up with able-minded actors, real actors who would know not only their lines. These kids, I call them kids, they were in their 20s and 30s playing high school kids, but they could not read, or not read very well. And they would therefore memorize everyone's line. So their line was after he says, "Are you kidding me?" And now I say something, and then, okay. And they would learn, imprint it, which is great. The night before or the week before, they were ready. The trouble is, Peter and Bobby, as writers, would come to the set with new pages. 7 a.m, suddenly got new pages. And these kids would burst into tears. And that was why. So if you watch the film, and certainly the editor watched it and called us on set, he was back in Hollywood, and he said, "This is amazing. These guys match their lines perfectly. Their body gestures, everything. It's identical on every take. Amazing." And as it turned out, all of these guys were paired up, the guys and girls were paired up with able-minded actor. I hope I'm using the right term. And they would say, "Okay, here's my line." And then you say, "Okay, I'll learn it. When do I say it?" And he said, "Well, I'm going to do like this." That's when you say your line. Someone else would say, "Well, I'm going to lean on your knee." That's when you say your line. So unbeknownst to the editor, everything was choreographed so these guys and girls could say their lines that they just learned at the right moment. And it was a hand gesture. It was something, "Oh man, when I scratch my head, you say that line." And they would, that's why the film is so unique in my perspective. In fact, Bobby did another film, just Bobby directed it in Winnipeg this summer, and same cast, or not the same kind of cast. So diversity in many ways. But Johnny Knoxville was there was I don't know if you've ever heard of a show called Trailer Park Boys.
Yes.
That's a TV show. And it was big in Canada, and it started playing in the States. And we were talking about TV shows just on set. And best show on television, best. And Johnny Knoxville walks by. What? That? No. Jackass. No, that's the best show. And he got in very heated at that point. And that's where it comes in. And I always tell people this. They don't believe me. The hardest films to shoot are comedies. The balance, the timing, the delivery, the setup, the punchline, the blocking, crashing cars, kicking people in the head, being a monster with a knife, they're all from a kind of catalog of stock things. But making people laugh, and Judd Apatow and Jim Carrey and everyone else who's come and gone, they will all agree it's pretty damn hard. So on sets with 10 Things I Hate About You, for example, directed by a sitcom director. And those were, in those days, they would shoot them on film when he started doing sitcoms, and they each have a video tap. So he'd look at what they call the quad split, and all 4 cameras were now on one monitor. And he would judge everything, the timing and this and that. Get the funny. Oh, there's no funny. And everyone had this hip kind of language, and the writers kind of ran things in that sitcom world. They were the showrunners. On a movie set, the director is in charge, and the writers, you're not welcome here. So they would, the first day of shooting, they would ambush Gil, I think of his name in a minute, Gil Younger. And he had all the comedy smarts from the sitcom days. I mean, Blossom and all those kind of standard shows. And the writers would invade the set, and it finally got, you think that's funny? I know funny. That's funny. This is fucking funny. You don't know funny, and back and forth. The first AD would say, okay, children, everyone leave. It's crazy. So we ended up with a long cable that would go to, we shot in a classroom or wherever we shot, or a high school. They would be in one room and they'd watch the monitors. And they were not allowed on the set. They would have, and he said, anything you want to tell me, put it on a Post-it note. That's 2 inches square. If it doesn't fit on there, I don't want to know. So you got to distill it down. And they would come running to the set, this PA who would have it stuck to their finger. This is what they want. Oh, yeah, okay, whatever. He'd crumble out, throw it away. Okay, we're going again. But that was, to me, that was the worst kind of bricklaying. That was not sculpture at all. That was, this means this means this means this. And everybody was new. I mean, that was Heath Ledger's first film in North America. And Julia Stiles, they never hadn't done, and this was what I call an AM movie, massive, a market movie, not an FM movie, which tends to be an art house thing. And we were shooting at this, they called it Stadium High. It was a former railway hotel that built itself on a cliff in Tacoma, Washington. And they built the cliff into seating and made the stadium field at the bottom of it. And so we were there, and Heath showed up, and Julia Stiles and everybody is there, and Heath Ledger had long blonde hair. And the director said, well, this is good, but you can't have blonde hair because, it's a love interest. So he shows up in the movie with dyed, dark, black hair. And that was his introduction to, after being a star in Australia and a theater star, writing and directing stuff, he's now a character actor, typified by having dark hair. But he's a blonde, like you see him in A Knight's Tale, I think, the show, the period thing with Mark Addy.
I genuinely always thought he had dark hair and was dyed blonde for A Knight's Tale, not the other way around. There we go.
Yeah, I have a Polaroid of him with Julia. And the director said, he's so good looking, I want to fuck him. But no, but yeah, those were really interesting films because they were part of a bigger world where indie films like Dumb and Dumber and Going Against the Grain and having a scene where a guy takes a shit, and it wasn't like a short scene. It was like, okay, this is the deal. And this was more 10 Things I Hate About You was more sitcom-y, what they call the feels, lump in the throat scenes, that kind of stuff. So,
you've had such an amazing career, like so many projects, directors, actors. But as we start winding down, like if you could pick one or two favorite memories from your career, like where someone goes, "What did you do for a living?" You go, "Well, one day I did this." Is there anything that's like pops to mind?
Well, now, forgive me for looking elsewhere. I'm just looking at. It takes a long time to scroll through all these movies. That's the thing about IMDb. People say, "How many films you do?" I don't know. Look at IMDb. So I'm looking at it right now. There's 175 titles.
Fuck.
So that's a lot. Good question.
Too many of them, Mark.
Too many.
Well, what happened with David and I had met David. I'd done a film in 1977 that was called Blood and Guts. And despite the title, it was a film about a wrestling company that traveled around. And wrestling, I don't know if you know this, is actually fake. It's all staged.
No, Mark. What do you mean?
And Donald Trump did not win the election. But so this film was great. And the producer, now I'll ask you, do you know who Sam Arkoff was? Or American International Pictures, AIP? Got something you have to look up. Write it down, AIP. He was the guy, as a marketing genius and a distributor, became a producer. And he said, I can't make money with films starring, Natalie Wood and George Hamilton or something. I can't afford those guys. I'm going to remake movies. And this is the new standard. And the movies he started making, he realized, I have to put my audience in the movie. Beach Blanket Bingo was his first big hit. And that became the AIP standard. Drag racing movies, motorcycles, surfing films, that sort of thing. So this Canadian producer, a guy called Peter O'Brien, ended up doing this film with a wrestling company. His next film was going to be about drag racing, and which is a radically different sport than Formula One racing or vintage motor car racing. But he hired David Cronenberg, who was a vintage racing enthusiast and had enough money to have bought Sterling Moss's Lotus Super 7, for example. He started early on in acquiring these cars. And he was going to do this film about drag racing, shot in Edmonton, Alberta, set in Montana. And it was very much an AIP movie with girls in the wet t-shirt contest and the bad guys and all that stuff. I met David, and he had already hired René Verzier, who was a French, not French-Canadian, a Parisian-French director of photography who was going to shoot, who had shot Shivers, I think, or Rabid, the preceding film. And David had hired him to do this film. And it was one of those at a cafe with a bunch of people, and he shake my hand like, yeah, pleased to meet you. How are you doing? Looking over my shoulder at somebody else, like, all right. I was 27 and he was 30, I think he's 32. Anyway, I missed that one. Freelance, hustle other things. Get a phone call a month and a half later at midnight on a Thursday night. I remember that. And hello, Mark, how's it going? Hey, Mark, who is this? It's David. David who? David Cronenberg, remember me? And it turns out René Verzier, the Parisian Frenchman, decided he had another film in Paris, and Edmonton, which is out in the middle of the prairies in Alberta, was not in his future. So, can you be on a plane? Yeah. At 7? What? In 7 hours? So yeah, I got on the plane, flew to Edmonton. It's now Friday. We prep on Saturday and Sunday and start shooting on Monday with René's crew. And after a week of shooting, knowing that I worked with this director for the first time, the footage went to Alpha Cine Lab in Vancouver, and it came back to us in this little production motel in Edmonton, and rigged up the projector and look at the dailies. And so by Thursday, we were looking at Monday's work, and then Friday and Saturday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And finally he says, you really seem to understand my style. I really like the way this looks. And this is the guy who I thought had, assessed me not good enough. And he said, you really seem to know my style. At that point, I had a choice, and I chose not to say anything. What I could have said is, David, I graduated from film school, and my thesis was all about David Cronenberg. I've been studying you from the beginning. I was projecting his films in high school. And this is where we began all this talking about French-Canadian cinema and filmmakers. That was kind of the crown jewels of Canadian film business. English-Canadian directors were not that. They were kind of journeyman directors who would do TV, CBC, and Ivan Reitman would do a low-budget film. David was a writer, director, producer, and cinematographer. So his early films, and this brings it back literally to this week, Stereo and Crimes of the Future, which is now this totally different film, same title, opened at Cannes on Monday. I had studied David. He was he's what I wanted to be, an English-Canadian, not a star or a master, but a filmmaker to be taken seriously. So that was where it all began with me. I have René Verzier to thank for my career, him turning the show down, and for that matter, David turning me down. So it was like Peter O'Brien said, this guy knows the style. It's AIP. We went from wrestling, which is kind of broad, public, kind of not a comedy, but a drama. And this one's motorized version of that. I want him. I got the call, and thank God I could get to the airport in 7 hours. So the rest, as they say, is history.
Wow.
Talk about coming full circle. That is beautiful.
Yeah.
And I saw David a couple of weeks ago in Toronto, and he's still making movies. I'm still shooting. People say, when are you going to retire? When the phone stops ringing. It's easy. I never got to choose what I did. So someone else is going to choose, hey, I want you on this. Or they say, oh, we want a guy like him. And they get somebody else. And that's when you realize you're 72 years old and they want somebody else. So that's cool.
Have you ever thought about writing a book, Mark?
I've been asked about that. I have, after every film I do, I take a lot of production stills, set stills and everything. And I make a photo book.
Oh, wow.
And one for the director and one for me, for the record. And so they're kind of like a signed thing where people say there's only 100 copies and the rest are phony. So I have a whole collection of those books, not a lot of words. So I'm telling stories with pictures, and the book is in the cinema, in the movies. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. I love that. That's genius. It saves your hand as well from all I had to do with that writing.
Yeah. And, it is a lot of impromptu, I guess they're quotations, observations on a set. And someone may 25 years later or 2 years later take offense to that. So I was about to do a film starring Dan Aykroyd and William Shatner called The Keeper of the Cup, about the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Stanley Cup, and three guys who decide, even though the Toronto Maple Leafs lose, and the Stanley Cup, they're going to steal the cup and take it back from Chicago to Toronto. It becomes a road picture with cops and the whole deal. So that's yet to happen. But so you never know what would go in a book that William Shatner might take exception to. So I'll leave it with the pictures. That's fine.
I love it. But as you're saying, about wrapping up, as long as the calls keep coming up. What I love is when I was looking at your IMDb, I was sat next to my 10-year-old daughter, and I was looking at these films from when I was a kid, and I was like, oh my God, he's worked on this, it's amazing. And then a film pops up that is one of my daughter's favourite films, The Descendants 2. And I was like, how weird is it that he's worked on my favourite films and now one of my daughter's favourite films? I loved it. And it's amazing that, that you brought me and my daughter together in that weird little way. I love it. It's awesome.
I'm looking for there was another Disney film that was a musical. Somehow I got to do musicals at Disney. And Teen Beach Movie 1 and 2. Pretty original title, but those are even closer to Beach Blanket Bingo. And the premise of the film, and shooting musicals is really liberating in one sense, but the premise is two kids in the present day on the beach. They go surfing, a giant storm essentially sends them into another dimension. They don't drown. They end up washed on the beach, and they're back where they started 40 years earlier. It's now 1962, and everyone's doing the twist. And the bikers and the surfers and the milkshakes and all that stuff. So look up for your daughter's sake, if not yours. Teen Beach Movie 1 and 2. They were Disney Channel shows, but big budget shows. And Descendants 2 was kind of part of that. I think they did a number 3 as well. Kenny Ortega, great choreographer director who did Descendants 1, 2, and 3. Yeah.
Yeah, she's made me watch them. Not my cup of tea, I gotta say, but she loves them. Bless her. That's fine.
Yeah. Well, introduce her to the beach movie, Teen Beach Movie.
I'll definitely have to point that out to her.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, have you got anything that you're working on at the moment that you can talk about?
Well, hold on. Oh, that's it. That Keeper of the Cup is one thing that lost its financing for a minute, so it's kind of come back. I was starting. I was to start another series for Netflix, and as I mentioned earlier, they decided, they looked deep within themselves and said, we can't afford. They can afford to spend $100 million on the Pentaveret miniseries that Mike Myers did, which maybe one person saw. That person was me, but they don't have any money for popular entertainment for families. So beyond that, I don't know. I've been talking to a producer in Oklahoma about a Sasquatch film called the Kiamichi Project, which was very grand, another tax situation. So the indie world is what it is. And a lot of, as I tell other people, there was a time when this 37-year-old director of photography came from his home country, having shot all kinds of movies there, came to Hollywood, and for 30 years had a great run shooting movies, all kinds of movies. And then after 30 years, he kind of crested, and that's where he ended or tapered off a bit. And his name was Mark Irwin. That's my career. So I've been shooting movies for 50 years, and I can't expect to keep shooting forever. And you see actors and certainly actresses in Hollywood, that somebody decides, and I don't know if they have a book of rules that says, you're too old, you're too fat, you're too bald, whatever they say about actors. They have another book about directors of photography. And I accept that. In fact, ironically, Beach Blanket Bingo was shot by a man called Sidney Crosby, who shot, his last name's Crosby, Sidney Crosby is a hockey player. I'll get the name in a minute, who shot a number of films and ended up winning an Academy Award. He was an ASC member. He lived in Hollywood, and his son grew up to be a rock and roll star. His name was David Crosby. And this was a guy who did Hollywood movies, ended up with indie films, won an Oscar, and then tapered off. That is actually where I'm not going to fight it. I can't. I've had gray hair since the 70s, so I never fought that. But I'm happy. My son is a cinematographer. He's winning awards and in Toronto in the CSC. So that's kind of the legacy that we share and pass on to each other. And in fact, next Saturday there is a kind of a memorial thing for all the DPs and camera people that we've lost in the last 2 years that couldn't be what's the right word? Shown the respect of even a funeral. Nobody could go anywhere. It was just like an online thing. So now it's a face-to-face thing. And that's Hollywood. I grew up in suburban Toronto and ended up in suburban Hollywood. I live in Studio City. And that's an arc that I like, as opposed to somebody getting lost in the shuffle. So I've been lucky. I've worked in all over Asia, India, Thailand, all over America, Canada, in the UK, and Italy. So the world comes at you, and you return. You come at it, and the pictures are what's left behind. So that's cool.
Beautiful.
Incredible. Tom, have you got any more questions, my friend?
I don't want to elaborate any more than that beautiful ending that Mark just gave us. So, to be quite honest, it's just been an absolutely incredible conversation, and I think we should have you back, Mark. To be quite honest, I think there's more we need to dig out of you. There's more stories I feel that are there.
You name it. I'm just say when I'm available.
Amazing.
Beautiful.
It'd be great to sort of like pick a few of these movies and deep dive and get some juicy goss.
Yeah. Well, does your audience or what are your podcast listeners? Do they respond? Will they give you ideas of what they want to know more about? Or
yeah, we'll find out.
Absolutely, we do our best to get words out there, but there'll be some people that'll be like, oh my god, well, why didn't you ask about that? And why didn't you ask about this? Yeah. So what we might do then is we might get some audience questions and bring them to you.
Great, yeah, because the ASC and the CSC, we all have podcasts, and the replies, they kind of build onto themselves. So okay, it's like, well, that's it for now. Oh wait, there's one more. So yeah, whatever flows out of it, that's cool. That's kind of why I'm here. Phenomenal. I'm going to take a magic frame grab. There we go. We'll see you in the movie, gentlemen.
Mark, before we let you go, do you have any plugs, social medias, anything you want people to go check out?
My Instagram has, I think, most of the up-to-date, set photos, as well as wherever I go, I take pictures. There's a few of us in the ASC that's our. Now, you've heard of the term a busman's holiday, haven't you?
Yes.
You're both. In America, they have no idea, but a busman's holiday is defined as what a bus driver does when he takes a holiday. He goes on a bus trip. Someone else drives the bus. So for me, the busman's holiday is to spend all week shooting what someone else wants. As I said, if I get one frame that I like, okay, that's my jewel of that day. But on my days off, I'm going to go take pictures for myself. So wherever I am, whether it's in India or Thailand or Victoria, British Columbia, or in Hollywood, so that a lot of my Instagram reflects that. And they can, there's no special code name. Just enter my name and you'll find me.
Amazing. Dad, I'll be looking for you after this.
Cool.
Beautiful. This has been so much fun, Mark. Perhaps an absolute amazing time talking to you and hearing your stories. It's been amazing.
Well, let's do it again. I'll make up more stuff.
It was all lies.
Oh, that's right.
Mark, thank you so much, man. We really appreciate taking the time out, and for the hour delay. I am so sorry about that.
Hey, no problem.
We'll blame Ed Sheeran. It's fine.
Yeah.
That's fun. What else do you know?
But enjoy the rest of your day, Mark, and we look forward to catching and talking to you soon.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Cheers. Take it easy, my friend.
All right. Is this thing on?
Well, howdy doody, everybody.
This is Braden Berry from Say We Can Fly, founder of Stay Cozy Clothing, your one-stop shop for the coziest, most fashionable hoodies, t-shirts, and more.
Gosh, Mickey.
That's right, folks. And we're proud to say that we are now sponsoring
the Chronicles of Podcast. Ouch.
Hosted by Tom and Jamie.
Like, you can get 10% off, man.
That's right, Shaggy. Just use the special code, The Chronicles, at checkout.
Oh, boys.
Just incredible.
Wow.
Those stories. Although I think he may have broken your heart when he basically told us that Jim Carrey's a bit of shit.
What he used to be. Yeah, it's one of those where you're like, do I really want to know what he's like behind the scenes? Do I really want to go down this rabbit hole? Yeah. Oh. But Leslie Nielsen. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, what a man. What a man.
I love, like I said in this interview, I love the fact that the stuff he's worked on has influenced me as a child, and now he's making stuff that my daughter loves, and I love that. I love that so much.
It's incredible. It's great. Mark, thank you so much for taking the time out to sit down and talk to us. We really, really enjoyed having you on the show.
Definitely to get back again.
And like Jamie said, we'll definitely have you back. And hopefully all you lot out there enjoyed listening to it as much as we did recording it.
Hey there, I'm Frank Guglielmelli, and I'm the narrator for the audio drama Feed, featuring such audio dramas as Bounty Hunters, Marty and Mars, Val Toby, and so much more. You can find all of these wonderful programs on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. Or you can go to our website at www.audiodramafeed.com. We are thrilled to be affiliated with the Chronicles of Podcast with Tom and Jamie.